Talk about it with the painting here, and I would like to introduce to you the artist of all of the paintings that are currently on display in St. Francis Barracks Museum, Jackson Walker. He is a prominent Florida artist. Here he is back in the work.
I'm Jackson Walker. I'm a historical artist, and I'm here today at the Florida National Guard's headquarters, where I have some of my paintings that I would like to take you around and show. This is one I wish I'd had a lot more information on, but during the Pancho Villa Revolution in Texas and Mexico, Pancho Villa's bandits had crossed over into Texas and New Mexico and raided a couple of American towns. So they called in the National Guard and the Army. Florida was one of the ones that volunteered their men to go patrol the border of Texas. And that's essentially what's going on. And I thought, well, okay, you know, you got to patrol the border. That's not a very exciting painting, you know. But that's one reason I put things in there like the dog, a little bit of humanity. But the plane, I wanted to show the effect of the plane on the pack mules and things like that they would normally not expect. And I was kind of lost in a way that I was down on the uniforms and the equipment, but I didn't know what these guys were going to do. You know? So they are kind of like just standing around, but I kind of think that that's pretty much what they did. This one here is World War II, and that was a landing in South Pacific that the 124th Infantry and the 116th Artillery. The guy that's behind the 50 caliber there on that, I got the pleasure of meeting him. His name is Sergeant Phil Ainsworth, and he was an old guy. This was back almost 30 years ago. And I did get a chance to talk to him and a couple of others that had been on the invasion there. So it was nice to actually talk to a real guy that was really there, and he was really pleased that I put his picture in, because he told me he was one of the guys that went ashore and he had a Tommy gun that he always carried with him, so I put him and his Tommy gun in there. Most of it was artillery, and they used those tractors to get them up off the beach because they didn't have much other way of getting them out of that mud. And so that was a big deal. That was Florida Brigade in Cole Harbor. The line of south had been punched through by these Union soldiers, and they occupied the different trenches that they had. And then the South decided to conglomerate all of the leftover Florida troops that had survived other battles in Cole Harbor to band together and make one big regiment and charge that line and see if they could get those trenches back from the Union, which they did. But I was like that because of the different faces, you know. When you paint paintings yourself, and then, you know, it's I don't know what it is, but if you're not real careful, all of your people look like they're related. I made it a point to go through every face and make a real new person that came up from who knows where, you know, and they all got together in this one little spot, you know. But the faces, both the north and the south, make a lot of difference. It adds a lot of emotion. That's Colonel Richard Gentry. He was the governor of Missouri. And during the Seminole Wars, when the Indians were fighting down here, the Army was not doing a real good job. And then Washington decided, well, what we'll do is we'll get different states to get volunteers to come to Florida and help the Army fight. So that's what they did. And so he brought his men down here. And the thing is that the volunteers hated the regular army. And the regular army hated the volunteers. So they didn't get along to begin with. But when they got on the field at Okeechobee, the commander of the army, the regular army, who was Zachary Taylor, and Gentry, who was in charge of this one unit that was supposed to start the battle. And Gentry, there was an argument between the two of those generals that this wasn't a real good idea. It was just going to kill his men. And then Zachary Taylor had made a remark about, well, if you're too scared to do this, we'll get... And that set him off. So, as it said in the description, he took his jacket off and grabbed his sword and just had his men come through the swamps, right face into the enemy. He was, of course, killed. But anyway, the Gentry, the guy that's portrayed here, a relative of his lives in Orlando, where I live. And he commissioned me, he'd heard of my work, and he says, I have a relative, and he told me the story. And I said, great, let's do it. So he put it on loan for me, that I could bring it up here and show it in this group. That was a hard painting to do, but it was a lot of fun. And then the Day Massacre, which you have behind you. It's the battle that the Seminoles started when they started the Seminole War in 1835 by catching a column of regular army soldiers that were marching from Tampa up to what's now Ocala. There were two forts that basically were. But they got caught in the open, and there was an all-day battle. And pretty much everybody, I think there was 3 survivors, that one made it back to civilization. But they were basically just wiped out, and it's a real big story in Florida military history. And this painting was done for another person, and then Colonel Moore found out about it, and he purchased it and brought it into this collection. The Seminole tribes kept, they would, in the 1800s, they grew, well, actually raised cattle and sold them in Tampa, which would go to Cuba, and they would feed Cuba. But the Seminoles came in, and they would get their money for their cattle that they brought, and then they would go back into the woods. But before they did, they would usually go into Tampa and with a little bit of cash, a little bit of gold, and buy things that they could normally not get. And I just imagine them buying cigars from Tampa and just returning back to the camps, And then this one over here is another Seminole saying, basically, river traffic opened up commercially to Florida waterways, and they started selling tickets to people to take rides and go into the different swamps and everything. At the same time, the Seminoles were trying to make their way along the shores and coexist with everything that was changing. So I just thought, well, I'd make a nice scene, see if I can get it. I can't get over this painting though. I mean, you look at that horse's face, and all I can think of, ever since I've finished this painting, if I look at that horse's face, I hear him saying, oh, where'd I go wrong? I could have been a contender. And of course, I'll always paint a dog every chance I get. I love dogs. Right. They're more fun to paint. Dogs and horses, I think. Spanish and English, pretty self-explanatory. I put this guy is basically, his name is Bob Hawke. He was the first guy that I met when I was doing work. He's the first historian they had here. Yeah, he's responsible for getting all this. And so I told him I would put his face in them. It was cool that these guys ran across this open field into this fort and just tore it up. I mean, it was a fierce battle. 1740, which was the English, had come down to Spanish Florida to try and dislodge them from the St. Augustine area, and they didn't quite succeed at it. So, but it was an interesting, because there was so much that we needed to find out about what that fort was, what it looked like, why, you know, it was a lot of just looking for minute detail to make it all come together somehow. This happened, they were getting ready to go up and kill Frenchmen in Jacksonville from St. Augustine, and they decided to do that right during a hurricane. So what they're doing there is going to march out of St. Augustine in a hurricane. And so I was happy with that, because I love the stormy sky idea and the winds and everything. The motion is in the atmosphere. Yeah, but that's pretty much the way it all goes together. Most times it's like a big mystery, you know, you just look around and say, why did this happen? What did they do to do this? And where you start and where you know, finish is often not anywhere the same, you know. So everyone is an adventure. So far, they seem to get done. But that's about it.
It sound right, boys.